Welcome to the lecture on chapters 3 and 4 from the Digital Writer. Chapter 3 focuses on digital images. Digital images can be a powerful form of digital rhetoric. Not all digital images are photographs. Diagrams, charts, signs, three-dimensional models, all of those things can also be considered a digital image. Digital images can be created in many different ways. We create digital images every day by using our smartphone to take selfies or to take pictures of things that we find interesting. Just a regular old fashioned camera is another way that we collect digital images. There are tons of different apps on your phone that also create digital images. Snapchat, we post lots of things on Instagram. There are lots of different apps that also allow us to create graphics. That is another example of a digital image. And then there's a lot of computer software that allows us to create our own graphics and images as well. So when we're talking about digital images, we're speaking in the broad sense of the word. Here are some different image categories. We have screen captures. So if you've ever taken a screenshot of a text message conversation, you have created a digital image. Animations, icons, photographs, and again, diagrams, charts, and maps are all examples of different image categories. It's important to consider the image category that is most appropriate for your purpose in writing, your audience's needs, and the medium and design. So you have to consider, would your audience be more receptive to a photograph or a diagram? Those are all things to think about as you're analyzing the rhetorical situation for whatever text you are creating. Text and images coexist in a document in some way. We can have a figure with a caption, a title with a painting, a company's brand name on an advertisement. All of these things kind of work together to present a message. One of the things that we are going to discuss is anchorage. Anchorage helps fix the meaning of an image so the audience can better interpret it. For example, a caption under a photograph helps the audience understand and interpret the meaning of an image. If you look at the photo that is posted here, we see a group of people doing something. We have no caption, so we don't really have a context for this image. We don't really have a deep meaning. If the caption said, group of students discussing their latest project, we would have an idea of kind of the context. We could draw some conclusions from that. If the caption said a group of colleagues socializing after lunch, that's a totally different context. It gives us a totally different idea of what might be going on in the photo. So having a caption helps cement that meaning into the reader's mind. We also have this thing called relay. This usually accompanies moving images such as film, commercials, slideshows, comic strips, etc. With with relay, you develop meaning through back and forth interplay between image and text. This is a larger narrative than either can provide individually. So you can have text by itself or you can have an image by itself. But when we put the two together, so if we had a slideshow that maybe shows an image and then some text, we're capturing a larger narrative and we can develop more meaning. Juxtaposition is one of my favorite words, first of all, but it is when you place two images together in a single space with a contrasting effect. Look at the photo that is posted here. You can see the sign that says go slow, but then you kind of see the blur of the images, which indicate that whatever is happening on the street is actually going pretty fast. That's an example of juxtaposition. This can be used to create meaning and communicate ideas to an audience. Denotation is of a sign or image is the literal meaning or the dictionary definition. So the denotation of an image is what you and anyone else will see when you view it. It does not include any symbolic meanings. So the denotation of this photo is just the dictionary definition. This is a cemetery. These are headstones. When we talk about connotation, the message that's the messages of an image that include the symbolic levels. This is important to think of when you start choosing images for some of the text that you're going to be creating. So if we look at the same image, again, the denotation, we said it was just a cemetery. These are headstones, but think about what this symbolizes, right? It could symbolize death. It could symbolize peace for some people. It could symbolize grief. So think about that carefully when you're choosing your images. What is the denotation? What is the connotation? You know, what symbols are people going to think of when they're looking at the photos or images that you're choosing? A visual narrative is when we use images to tell a story. These can definitely evoke emotions, and at times they can be more powerful than just words. The example that I like to think of to explain this is a music video. Right? We have lots of visuals, and those visuals are all working together to give us the main point of the music video. And that definitely evokes different emotions. Adaptation is changing a version of a story from one medium to another. And there are some examples listed here. You see the book, The Cat in the Hat, which was made into a movie. The book Jumanji, which was made into a movie and then rebooted into another movie. These are all examples of adaptation. A photo montage, you can see in the example there, is made of several images stitched together into a single visual. It juxtaposes images that might not fit within the same space of a single camera shot. So if we look at this photo, we see the Eiffel Tower, and we know that there is no person that big. Clearly, whoever created this photo created a photo montage. They inserted a picture of this man climbing to look like he is climbing up the Eiffel Tower. At the bottom, I have think fake news. So think of all the photos we see that are photoshopped that make people think that something is happening when it really isn't. That is a prime example of a photo montage. Now we're going to get into image ethics. It is very easy to manipulate images. As you can see, this photo of the Eiffel Tower was obviously manipulated. You want to be careful when using certain images or applying a certain editing function to existing images, especially images you intend to use for public or professional reasons. Once you put it out there, it's out there. And it's going to be attributed to you. So you want to make sure that you are being careful when you are manipulating these images. This leads us to fair use. So how can we use images that are not our own in a legal and safe way? So fair use is an exception to copyright laws that allows copyrighted works to be used in certain ways without the copyright holder's permission. For example, if you are using an image for a document that is only going to your instructor, you do not need to cite that. It falls under the fair use. Copyright law protects the rights of a work's creator to decide how that work is used within a specified period of time. The fair use doctrine provides an avenue for users to study, expand, reinterpret, and otherwise make use of copyrighted material in a way that will promote the progress of science and useful arts. That is why you're able to use images that is just going to, one single person, or maybe just going to your classmates without getting any copyright permission. It falls under the fair use agreement. How do you know if you can use an image? So like I said, uses that are educational and nonprofit in nature are more likely to be considered fair than commercial uses of someone else's original copyrighted work. This factor often provides the basis for protection of uses such as scholarship or criticism. Works of fiction are more likely to be protected since they are necessarily original creations of an author. Likewise, uses of unpublished works are less likely to be fair use than uses of published works, since one tenet of copyright law is that an author has the right to determine whether and when his or her work is made available to the public. Generally speaking, the smaller the portion of a copyrighted work used, the more likely that use is to be considered fair. Using thumbnails of copyrighted images in search engine results is fair use. So you don't need any copyright information to use that. Since a thumbnail is a diminished version, not an exact replica of an image, that is why you're able to use those and they fall under fair use. However, using even a relatively small portion of a copyrighted work can render a use unfair if the portion used constitutes the heart of the work or a central defining part of the work. I know this is a lot of information to take in, but we'll get down to what you actually need to know for this course. In order to be considered fair, the use of a copyrighted work cannot impinge upon a creator's ability to make money from his or own creation. So that means that you cannot take an image from the internet and also try to use it to make money when it belongs to someone else. And to sum up fair use, basically for this course, the images that you're going to be using are fine. You can use them. You don't have to get any type of copyright permission. You do, however, still need to cite your sources. So for the sources that are copyrighted, you will need to get permission from the original creator of the image. Using others' images is considered plagiarism and against the law. So since we're only using images for this course for us to see and your classmates to see, that falls under fair use. If you're going to share any of this work outside of the scope of this course, you might get into needing to get some copyright permissions. So, excuse me, moving on to, do you need to cite your images? Did you create the image? If the images are yours, for example, you drew it, you took the picture, or your image isn't an adaptation of someone else's work, you don't need to cite them. So anything you create originally for this course, you do not need to cite. If you're using clip art from PowerPoint, double check the source of the image. Clip art provided by PowerPoint doesn't need to be cited. However, PowerPoint also gives users the option to search for Bing content. And since Bing is a search engine, the authors could end up using an image without considering the ownership. So just regular clip art is fine, don't cite that. If you're searching for something beyond what's available in PowerPoint, you probably will need to cite the source. Rule of thumb, assume the image is copyrighted and you therefore need to give credit for the image. If the image is copyrighted and royalty-free, you should still acknowledge the creator of the image and where you retrieved it. For example, image created by Josie Lee, retrieved from insert the website URL. If you're not sure what is expected, please check with your instructor. That's another good rule of thumb. Some considerations. When providing credit for the image, try to determine who owns the copyright image versus simply citing the website where you found it. Just because an image is on someone's website or blog doesn't mean that you can use the image copyright free. For example, I have a blog that I maintain and I use images all the time. I have to give consideration to whoever created that original image. And also, if you wanted to use an image on my blog, you couldn't just take the image and use it without finding out where the image originally came from and giving that person the credit. Again, if your PowerPoint presentation is going to be presented only to your instructor and cohort, your classmates, you don't need to obtain copyright permission to use the images because it falls under the fair use or fair dealing policy. If the image will be used in any work that will be published outside of the college, you will need to contact the copyright holder to request permission to use the images. So long story short, For this course, you don't need to get permission to use the images, but you do need to cite them unless they're clip art. Moving on to chapter 4, which deals with digital analysis. You will need this information for an assignment that is coming up this week. The first thing to keep in mind when we're talking about digital analysis is critical thinking. You all need to be critical thinkers. Here are some questions to keep in mind. Why did a writer include a certain example as evidence? Why is a writer using this specific type of typeface? Are they trying to portray a message with that? Are they trying to get the reader to feel some type of emotion with the type of typeface they're using? The same thing with images. Why would a writer include a specific image? Are they trying to evoke emotion? What point are they trying to get across by using that image? What audience is the writer trying to reach? This is a really important aspect of critical thinking. And then lastly, what makes this writer believable? What kind of credibility does this person have that's going to make me trust what they're putting out there? We'll also be analyzing some rhetorical features this semester. So we'll be analyzing the writer and purpose. The writer is always the first step in the rhetorical triangle that we talked about last week. When we're talking about audience, we need to think about the beliefs and values of our audience. What do they believe? What do they value? And how can we make whatever text we're presenting to them fit in with those beliefs and values? Does the audience share a specific religion, form of government, worldview? These are things to think about when we're analyzing rhetorical features and even creating our own pieces of writing. What does the audience most likely want from you, the writer? What are the experiences of the audience? What are their living situations? In what medium did the audience receive the writer's message? Did they receive it on social media? Did they receive it in an email? These are all things to think about. And then lastly, we get to the message. What is the message or context behind the digital text or image? Along with that, we can also analyze rhetorical appeals. So going back to our prized triangle here, if we look at logos, we're asking, how is the text using a reasoned argument to convince the reader? Ethos, is the author credible? How do we know? What do we trust or distrust about this author? And then pathos, how is the author using emotion to connect with the audience? Why is the author trying to evoke these specific emotions? And lastly, kairos, which is that time piece. Why did the author choose this specific time to create this text or image? I think a lot about kind of the recent happenings when it comes to like racial tensions, and a lot of the artwork that has come out of this renewed vigor for racial equality. So when we talk about that timing piece, what is a good time to create a piece of artwork? Definitely there was a market for that type of artwork given everything that was happening in the world, or it still is happening in the world. Is there a pressing need to communicate that cannot wait until a later time? What is the text that relates to other local, national, or global events? So lots of things to think about as we're analyzing some of the writing that others are doing in the writing of your peers this semester. You will also be doing some analysis of argument. So looking at a claim, what's the main claim of the text? What reasons support that claim? And then what evidence backs the text reasoning? Does the text provide any counter arguments? These can be explicit or implicit. We'll get more into this towards the end of the semester. We can also analyze design, medium, and genre. So thinking about color, how do the colors used contribute to the argument? How does the typeface used implicitly bolster the argument? What is the author trying to emphasize with the layout of the text or the image? And then why did the author create the text in this genre? Or why did the author use this specific medium? Again, things to think about as you're analyzing others, but also things to keep in mind as you're designing text for this course. So this is some PowerPoint that you can come back to over and over again and look at these questions and make sure that you have appropriate answers for your own work. And that concludes our PowerPoint on chapters 3 and 4. Email me with any questions you might have.